So I just want to show something really quick. I'm already there, but let's show you how I got here. Components, rifle match bullets, 7mm, search, boom. 7mm, and 150 grain weight class. Apparently they consider their match bullet. Hollow point boat tail design. Let's take a closer look at these. Okay, so if these are match bullets, let's do some measuring, and let's see, this is 149.52, so that's almost a half grain difference between the target weight, what it actually measured out to. This is 150.14, so already that's over half a grain. 150.02, that's pretty darn close to what we're aiming for. 149.78, so that's kind of that's decent. And then 149.26. See if that's repeatable. Yeah, 149.28. 24, so I must be breathing on it just right. Ooh, okay, so that's quite the variance. Because let's see, according to Sierra's website, so Sierra's quality control, they try to do everything within 0.3 grains, which is actually a pretty tight tolerance. Just for funsies. Now, actually, first, let's show you what it zeroes at. So about 4 thousandths, because a little bit above the 1, we have the thing in there. I'm just going to do the round base to the ogive. And let's see what it comes out to. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. See, that's 6.6. I'm trying to angle it so you guys can see it, so that my stage light will go ahead and say doesn't affect it. So yeah, okay. It's pretty good. 6.6. Six six. Yeah, like almost 6.7. I feel like if I play with it a little bit more, I can get it. I can almost force it to the 6.6, but that's bad. So any which way I wiggle with it, this way, up and down, 6.7. So we're 1 thousandths off. That's not terrible, actually. It's part of the reason why you measure off of the ogive rather than the overall length. But and there we go. We're back to 6.6 again. Might be slightly under, but very little play. I bet you know what, just for funsies, let me take off the comparator. Okay, so just for funsies, I took off the comparator, and let's see the variance of the overall length. And this will vary quite a bit. So 1, 2, 8, 9, closer to the 9. Now, if these are even within 1/100th of an inch, oh hey, 1, 2, 9, a little bit under. Holy shit. 129. So now this one feels a little bit almost wobbly in the base, but you can see there it's pretty much 3 thousandths longer. Um, that's by no means a bad result at all. Like actually, oh yeah, and here's another one that's a little bit longer. Part of me wants to grab 5 more, but honestly, no. Let's keep it simple. The fact that these are within 3 thousandths of one another just for the overall length, I'm not that you should really sort out bullets according to that. Um, Usually it can be more, especially with a hollow point design like this. Sierra Match Kings and even the Nosler custom competitions can vary noticeably. The Hornadies as well. Pretty much any design like this, you'll notice that sometimes there's little jaggies, but this is surprisingly uniform. I'm actually impressed. And the fact that the ogive varied by thousandths, I mean, that's not unheard of before. I'm sure there's someone out there on YouTube screaming their head off at me right now, but I can't remember what the cost of these per bullet was, 22 cents. I'm not going to complain. Actually, want to know why I forgot to check? So, the actual diameter of the bullet. So now, these are actually measuring, and I'm trying not to squeeze too hard, consistently 283.5. And one thing that I think is very interesting is I noticed something along with the, here we go. The last time I saw something like this and was with the Nosler custom competitions with my 8mm Mauser. Now, to get it to do that, I have to grip it very lightly. In fact, you can see, there we go. Like, if I let off just a little bit, it drops. So it's not as bad as with the Nosler custom competition that I saw, but that's still it's still a little bit unnerving, isn't it? Isn't it? Let's grab this other one because not all of the bullets. Oh, this one kind of does it too. But again, it's like as soon as I let go of the slightest amount of pressure, it drops right off. So it's barely there. It's barely there, but it's still there. But it does seem to be consistent in the bullets. I'm really actually more worried by how. Okay, this one is not doing it. In fact, there we go. It just dropped straight out. And you can see, I mean, there, 83.5. Hmm. 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 So let's go over the components first. We used Vitivori N540. Of course, the Parvy Partisan 150 grain match bullets. Remington primers for starters. Later we did go over to Winchester match, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Then lastly, Norma brass, which I believe has been neck turned. Now, disclaimer, this is not the first firing of that. In fact, with this Norma brass, it's at least 10 times, maybe even 15. But it is neck turned, and also I did not anneal the cases. And partway through, I actually wondered if that might be part of the issue, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's start first things first. We did start with Remington primers, and this is our 10-shot load workup. And you can see we have a couple, I don't want to say plateaus, but a couple areas where we could take a look at and be like, okay, this is okay. And this is the one I settled with. So now if you watch the original video with 6.5 guys, he wants you to take the two nearest points. I've decided to expand upon that. So my first load workup that I chose, I believe, was this 4.6. Because you can see here from here to there, it's about a spread of 9. If we were to take all these individual points at face value and compare them only to one another. So that said, I took them out to the range and I proofed them. I tested them. And you can see here, actually, we didn't do too bad. 2478, 2487, 2487, 2506. If you take only those four numbers into account, I mean, you actually have something that's pretty good with a standard deviation of just under 12. That's not bad at all for non-annealed brass. However, look at this fifth shot. 2559. So that's just shy of what we got with our maximum load of our original 10 round workup. So that had me a little bit worried, actually. And I graphed it over here. You can see that. There's a sudden spike up. So, I mean, there was a part of me that was like, okay, is it the brass? Is it the bullet? Because, I was even willing to say, is it my chronograph? But chronographs, even fairly cheap entry-level ones, do have a degree of reliability. The big difference between chronographs really is how close to the actual value they get versus, the amount of precision they have. Yes, there's a little bit of a, I'll go ahead and say slop, but they're actually fairly reliable. But that's a discussion for another time. I'm willing to take at face value and say it is more of the load workup, because one thing about this with Vitavore N540, I wanted to use basically match components. However, this load, it is actually only at about 70% fill capacity. I was willing to say, hey, I think it is the load, not necessarily the equipment. That said, moving on. I wasn't willing just to call it good there, because I took this at face value. I considered this basically a failure, because standard deviation 32 with extreme spread of, well, you do the math. Anyway, so then we went on and went to use Winchester match primers, and look at how much better, how much more gradual this is. And we have a couple areas that we can use. And I believe I settled for this 41.4, because look at that. We have a duplicate here, 2520, 2520, and then that 2515. So just a spread of 15. So you'll notice I have two sets of data here, but both of them are at 41.4. That's because I was also testing with different seeding dies, but both of them were seeded out to the same. But you can see here, ultimately, extreme spread 105. And standard deviations are pretty comparable. Ultimately ended up being around 30. And I'm very frustrated at this point. And this is when I took a look at my data and I said, actually, Vitavore N540 actually has a pretty not that great fill rate. So I wonder if maybe we dare go further up. And that's what this set of data is over here. Because you can see here, even though this looks far exaggerated, that's because there's just 5 data points here. But you can see overall, there is just an extreme spread of 26 with a standard deviation of 12. Now, keep in mind, this is a load workup. We're going from 42 to 42.8 grains. But we have an extreme spread and standard deviation better than the rest of our data. So what I went ahead and did is I just took the very smack dab center of all this data, this 42.4, and I tested it again. And here we have it right here. And you can see, basically, we succeeded. I mean, it's not a single digit extreme spread or even standard deviation. But finally, we got something that was, for a 115-year-old military surplus rifle, acceptable. So, wow. I actually originally had probably over 3 hours of footage shot for this, and I was in the middle of editing this, and I said, ultimately we're just taking a look at the numbers we got with our chronograph. Let's just spend 10 minutes looking at those numbers rather than, an hour of me screaming at the camera. So I did want to add one other thing, though. Actually, a couple other things. But so ultimately, 42.4 ended up working out um, within an acceptable range, enough that I was able to claim a small victory at least. But I did test a little bit further. I did go a little bit beyond that because being silly and looking at the chronograph numbers, I knew I could push a 150 grain bullet faster. So I went ahead and I did work up even further, but not by too much. See, 43 versus 43, or 43 through 43.6, and we ended up getting up to 2,700 feet per second. Not bad, and we see we do have another kind of a little bit of a node here, although it's not too tight, but I went ahead and graphed it right there. So it's getting a little bit more unstable. It's starting to look a little bit more like it did with the Remington primers, and with another sharp increase in velocity, I didn't want to push it. And also, it should be noted on this last one, we had a little bit of a sticky bolt. The primer wasn't too flat, but we did have a little bit of a sticky bolt, which that's the point where I know I definitely need to back off with this rifle. Now, another thing I wanted to add is because I almost went on that digression about, is it the brass? Well, I'm going to include some footage where to test the brass, I brought another known load, and it was actually with Winchester 760. So not the best powder, but well, just watch the video. Okay, so I just finished firing both sets. So on the bottom again was the Hornady match, 162 grains. And I'm not sure how well you guys can see it. Come on. Here we go. There we go. See like the extra shiny spots in the primer? That's from where it basically slammed extra hard into the bolt face. So now, since 7mm Mauser 303 British, like comparatively speaking, they're low pressure cartridges, right? At least when compared to like modern day cartridges like 5.56 or whatever, where you're getting up into like 60,000 psi. These things are like 45,000, okay? So comparatively speaking, lower pressure. So this is more of a sign that I pay attention to more than flattened primers, because flattened primers, I mean, that takes something extra special, right? But this you're going to see before you see flattened primers on a cartridge like this. So when I see flattened primers, I get extra worried. When I see this, I'm like, okay, I know we're getting there. But you'll notice with the Vitivori, we don't really see that. In fact, they look normal, but this was the bottom charge, 42 grains. This is the top charge, 42.8. Actually, wait, I think I do see a little bit of a shininess. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the numbers. Everything's set up here. Let's move on. Change string. So these are the Hornady bullets. So 2629, 2645, 2650, 2656, 2645. So the standard the extreme spread 27, standard deviation 10. So basically, I managed to match Mark III ball. In fact, I managed to make a really good Mark III ball ammunition. But that's with Winchester 760, not Vitivori and 540. So there's nothing wrong with this brass at all. The fact that it's on its 12th firing, in fact, 1 second. Yeah, look here. split case neck. That's not the issue. So I feel like I can just disregard. I'm looking for any more split case necks. The whole non-annealing thing. Like, not annealing isn't the issue. So either it is the bullet, or maybe I have yet just to find a good charge range, although maybe I just stumbled upon it. You know, some geese are flying back. So I wanted to end this video on a positive note, and I feel like I kind of got that. I got a little bit more hope, a little bit of glimmer. Maybe I'll load these up and I'll have to make a short little part 2 confirming that. But I want to put this on paper, see how it prints. Okay, and with that, that's how I knew that my brass was still good. Because we were able to achieve fairly good numbers with that. There's nothing really too extreme, no huge shoot ups with velocity like with this, so it was probably just the load. Furthermore, now what if it was because of the bullet? Okay, so earlier I showed you the video about Winchester 760, kind of proving that the brass was totally fine even if it was unannealed. Now what I did for kind of a bullet verification is, well, I also switched powders. Lately, I got a hold of a shipment of Norma URP, and I wanted to give it a go. And here's my initial proofing load, where I'm taking the load data they had available, and I'm adapting it to the components I have. So I wanted to see how well the minimum charge did, and it actually did overall fairly well. Actually, I'm far more excited than what I should be, because look at this, 2530, 2539. I got duplicates, which for my chronograph it's an actual duplicate, like the load matched. So when you take a look at these two sets of numbers, that's an extreme spread of 9 with a standard deviation of, yeah, a little over 5. That's amazing. For this rifle especially. But then we have this, I'm going to go ahead and say flyer, but this basically confirms to me that some of the weird quirks I was witnessing earlier with the other load data was more about the load itself than the components. Because here we still have this weird, I'm going to go ahead and say flyer, that happened that kind of throws a wrench into our lovely works. But you know what? That's actually why I enjoy loading for this rifle, is because accurate rifles are boring. So anyway, that's been my quest, my journey, I dare say odyssey, for Pyrrhic Partisan match bullets. Nearly 100 bullets later, and we finally got something that works marginally decent. And sadly, this is where I stop the odyssey. I actually don't have enough primers left to do an actual range report and to do a seating depth analysis. I would like to do that maybe one day, but with the primers I have left, I'm going to spend them on other projects.